Hi, I'm Matt Schaus, and I'm excited to share with you tips to help you enjoy the best of the West today. So in today's video, I want to share with you tips to help you plan your national parks vacation. Now, there's national parks all over the country, but a lot of people are coming out west to the Rockies to visit some of the really big, popular national parks like Yellowstone and the Grand Canyon and Glacier National Park and all that. So what I want to do in this video is just to help you, give you some general tips to help plan your big vacation, okay? So number one is to start planning early. I would recommend typically about a year and a half to start planning your national parks trip. And that's because there are reservations that you need to get in advance, and with flights and stuff like that, it can just kind of take a while to get everything together. Now, it's not to say that you can't go on a trip if you're not starting all the way a year and a half in advance. In fact, I often violate this own rule because I'm used to going to these on a whim on the weekends and stuff like that. But nowadays it's getting a little more difficult because the parks really are quite crowded. The lodging books up, ticketed entries that you have to worry about and stuff like that. So just start early and start preparing. Okay, the next tip is just to get a general game plan for your trip. You don't need to have everything ironclad at this moment, but just kind of get an idea for what there is to do in the area that you want to go or the park that you want to go. I recommend starting with the national park website first because they'll give you the most up-to-date information, and they'll give you a nice brief overview of what there is to do there. Now, then national park sites are great. They're fantastic, but they only cover what there is to do there, and they don't really give you a lot of opinions about what the best things are to do. For that reason, you need to branch out and you have to find out what else is around there, and then you have to get a game plan from people who've been there like us. So we have a website, we're on the Rockies.com, where we give you all sorts of trip planning information, and then we also have many other videos on this channel where we're giving you tips for visiting these places. Okay, so just get a general feel for what it is to do there, what you want, and how long you're going to need to stay there. Okay, my next tip is to buy your national parks pass in advance. So you can buy this. This is an America the Beautiful pass. This is a yearly pass that's about $80, and it covers any national park or really any federal site for the most part. So I buy that every year. I just buy that at the first of the year, and it covers me wherever I want to go that year. Each park will sell their own individual pass that's good for a week. It's usually between $25 and $35 for the week. So if you're only visiting one park, that's a better deal. But if you're going to go to more parks, typically you want to buy that America the Beautiful pass. If you're a senior, you only have to buy this one time, and it's good for the rest of your life. You can also get this pass for free if you are military or a veteran, if you are disabled, or if you have a fourth grader. So I'll put a link in the description if you want to check that out. Here's another tip. So either buy it way early or just buy it at the park when you get there. Because if you buy it and you don't get your park pass before you leave for your vacation, then you're out of luck. You'll have to buy another one when you get there. So I usually just buy mine when I get to the park actually, but you can buy it online ahead of time and have them ship it to you. Okay, the next tip is to get your reservations early. So in-park lodging, so lodging that's inside the national parks, typically opens up 13 months in advance. The campgrounds typically open up 6 months in advance. So you want to be on this early, and they do book up. They'll book up fast, actually. Now, other lodging that's around the national parks in some of the cities located nearby, those don't book up quite as fast, but they will book up. So you do want to be on top of those about a year in advance as well, ideally. Again, a lot of times I'm kind of flying by the seat of my pants, but if you end up getting a spot closer, so like if you end up booking it closer to your vacation, you'll typically end up with a spot farther away from the park, which just means you have to do a lot more driving. It's a lot of times not as fun. So I would say try to get something inside or close to the parks as a general rule. You will pay more for the in-park lodging, but you'll be closer to the sites, and you won't have to wait in line to get into the park like a lot of the other people are who are staying nearby. Okay, also some parks require reservations for their restaurants. So eating at some of the restaurants can be actually a nice experience at the national parks, because these lodges were built like over 100 years ago. A lot of them, they were railroad lodges for the people arriving on the railroad, and so a lot of them, they were catered towards wealthier railroad customers from the east. So a lot of them are quite nice. They're kind of an experience in and of themselves, and so to eat in one of those restaurants can be quite nice, like El Tovar at the Grand Canyon or Lake Village in Yellowstone. Places like that you might want to get a reservation for. Okay, and then also some of the parks are now moving over to ticketed entry systems, meaning not only do you have to have your park pass, but you have to have a ticket to get into the park, like a reservation to get into the park. Some of these parks are so popular now, and they don't have really the accommodations to handle that many people that they're limiting the flow. So again, check the park website, make sure you're on top of that, because that seems to be changing every year currently. It's just a big deal right now with the parks. Okay, my next tip is to prepare for a lot of driving. The West is big and you'll be driving a lot. So even if you don't do a big road trip out west to some of these places, which is popular, even if you fly out here, you'll still be doing a lot of driving for the most part because the parks are big, they're spread out. Yellowstone itself takes 5 or so hours just to drive around the loop. That's not even making any stops. And so just getting around, like Yellowstone's bigger than a couple of the states in the east. And then if you're going again between parks, you're going to be driving quite a bit, hours and hours a lot of times. So be prepared for a lot of driving. It's real fun. It's very scenic. Believe me, the national parks are not the only thing out west to see. There's lots of scenery out here. So it is fun. It's fun to drive around. It's kind of the great American road trip, but be prepared to drive. Okay, if you're liking this video or getting any value out of it, I really would appreciate it if you'd click that little thumbs up there. That helps me out. And then also, I'm curious, where are you going in 2022 on vacation? Are you going to any of the national parks out west? Are you visiting the Rockies? And what are you going to see? Okay, the next thing is to prepare for the cost of your trip. So I'm not going to go into every detail on the costs here, but there are, you have your normal vacation expenses of hotels and restaurants and rental cars and things like that, flights and all that. I just want to cover a couple of things that are different about visiting the Rockies and the national parks. Is, as I mentioned, the national parks don't cost that much to get into, so $80 at the most, and that's covering you for your entire trip and your entire family. So that covers your whole vehicle getting into the park. I mean, super affordable that way. That's pretty amazing. But if you're coming from the east, flying out here can be pretty expensive. A lot of times you're going to these smaller airports that are a little more remote, and so that's going to cost you quite a bit of money. And then the lodging can sometimes cost quite a bit. Like, for example, Jackson Hole, that's a pretty expensive place to stay. So you do have to be prepared for that. I think the lodging is typically going to be more expensive than what you're used to, but the cost of the attraction is super affordable at $80 for that park pass. My next tip is to study the map. So each national park, as you enter, they're going to give you a brochure, and it'll give you a bunch of information. But one of the biggest things on the brochure, one of the most helpful things, is they have a map. They'll have a map for their park that will help orient you and guide you around. Well, the nice thing is you can pull that map up on their website before you go, and you can study it and get a feel for where things are and how far apart they are. That's really important as you're planning any vacation, but especially the national parks, you want to be familiar with where things are. My next tip is about your packing list. So I'm not going to go into everything that you need to pack for your trip. We've actually done other videos with a bunch of things that you should consider packing. One of our videos is for Yellowstone and Grand Teton. Another one of our videos is for a southwestern road trip, like through southern Utah and the Grand Canyon, that hot desert environment. But in general, if you come out west to the national parks, you are at high elevation. You're in the Rockies.
Yeah, we're in the Rockies.
You're going to be high elevation. You're going to want to pack layers of clothing, because even in the middle of the summer, when it might be 80 degrees during the day, it might be in the 30s at night. It can be quite cold in the mornings when you wake up. So pack some layers of clothing, pack some good hiking shoes. We usually recommend shoes, not boots, like trail runner type shoes, instead of big bulky boots, because mostly in the national parks, the trails are well traveled, they're beaten down, they're not that muddy or anything like that. But if you do some backcountry hiking, you'll want some boots. Also, you need to pack your patience. So the parks can be pretty crowded. You might have things that throw your agenda off. That's fine. Just be patient. Just remember that you're at the national park. You're out in nature, and it's better than being at home probably. So pack your patience. Okay, my next tip is don't forget nearby attractions. So the national parks are fantastic, they're wonderful, but there's all these things around the national parks. I mean, remember, they're just the tip of the iceberg of the West, really. There's just so much else to see in the West. So a lot of these parks will have some really cool little cities right next to them. So for example, this last year we were at Theodore Roosevelt National Park in North Dakota, and they have a really cute little town called Medora, North Dakota, next to it. That was a big part of the trip. You want to spend some extra time there if you go there. Another example, at Yellowstone, there's Cody, Wyoming nearby. Grand Teton has Jackson, Wyoming nearby. So there's some cool little cities nearby these places a lot of times. And then there's also state parks that are nearby. I can think of Custer State Park in South Dakota, the Valley of Fire in Nevada. Kodachrome Basin that's near Bryce Canyon in Utah. There's just tons of awesome state parks that are often overlooked and much less crowded. Also, there's national monuments. So national parks seem to get all the attention, but some of these national monuments are just as great. I can think of Cedar Breaks in Utah. I can think of Devil's Tower in Wyoming. Some of these places are really cool. They'll add to your trip quite a bit. And then consider going on some adventures like whitewater rafting or rock climbing, horseback riding, or biking. A lot of these parks, these outdoor parks, they have a lot of cool businesses that will help you enjoy your trip with some of these other adventures. Okay, my next tip is to create your itinerary. So put it down on paper, make a real solid game plan. Include a variety for the kids. The number one thing I could tell you if you have kids is make sure you get a hotel with a swimming pool, because sightseeing and being out in nature is great for us adults, but sometimes for the kids, it's kind of boring for them. So make sure to include a variety. Again, that's where you can get some adventures like biking and things like that. Think about how to make the trip fun for everybody in your group. Have a plan, but be flexible and enjoy the ride. You're gonna run into wildlife jams sometimes. You'll run into crowds. Sometimes there's fires, forest fires that change your plans. There's bad weather. I have a little saying, which is to bring your own weather. There's been so many vacations we've gone on where it was raining or snowing and there was some problem, and I just tell my kids, you bring your own weather, You still, if it's raining, you still get out there, you put your poncho on and go see some things and bring a good attitude. That's the most important thing. My final tip is to watch the playlist that we've put together for you. So if you're going to any of the places that we've covered, we have playlist for Yellowstone and Grand Teton and Zion National Park and the Grand Canyon, Bryce Canyon. We're making the Black Hills. We're making Glacier. We're covering all these places out west, and we're doing a bunch of playlists on them to help you with all the things that you'll need to know. So you can just sit back on your couch, get a notepad, and watch our playlists and just start taking notes. That'll really help you out. And then again, we have our website, we'reintherockies.com, that you can check out. And then we also create itineraries. We actually create step-by-step detailed itineraries to help you enjoy your trip and get the most out of your visit to the national park. We want you to love your trip, so check those out. They really are great, and they include an audio guide. I've made an audio guide for most of them. We've got a lot of resources to help you plan your trip, and I hope you have a great trip in 2022 or 2023, wherever you're going. Until next time, go west, young traveler.